Here's a weird thought. Nearly every game you play, the character you control has some kind of health, whether it be hearts, a health bar, or red droplets impairing your vision that slowly fade away. It always kind of bugged me, especially in shooter games, that my character could get hit with so many bullets and not even break stride. But you kind of just accept this as the way things are and keep going. But I've been out of a job since the pandemic started, so I've had a lot of time to sit and think about different concepts. One of these concepts was how different games handle the player's health. It's something we kind of accept as the way things are. But after thinking about it, there's actually some really interesting ways to replace these systems that we've grown so accustomed to. There are ways to handle combat in games without a health meter. So what would it look like? Let's start by breaking things down real quick. 90% of all modern games handle combat progression like this. You start out very weak and most enemies can easily take you out. But as you progress further, you gain some combination of leveling up and becoming stronger and unlocking better equipment that allows you to survive more damage.
That's how Mafia works?
But in real life combat, if you take a hardened veteran and stand them next to some random civilian, there isn't a massive difference in the amount of damage that they can withstand. Sure, the hardened veteran could take a few punches, and probably knows how to survive being shot if he gets lucky. But a well-placed shot on either of these characters will have the same exact outcome. Increase in skill does not result in an increased ability to withstand more damage. In fact, increased skill actually results in an increased ability to avoid being damaged in the first place. The hardened veteran knows exactly how to get out of the line of fire and has well-trained reactions, because he knows a single shot could take him out of action. Shooter games tend to be the example people provide at this point in the conversation, because usually, no matter how far you progress, you don't gain any additional health. There's a certain amount of hits you can survive, and then you die. But there's still a certain amount of hits that you can survive. You can get hit with 6 or 7 bullets, and be on the brink of death, and then run away and hide in the bushes for a few seconds and be right back at full capacity. Realistically, you should be out of commission after one hit. One hit. But that doesn't make a very fun game. You essentially find yourself with the first-person shooter version of Flappy Bird, which actually sounds pretty interesting come to think of it. Still, not a reasonable solution here. So we need to find a way where you can survive as long as you do in existing games without being a bullet sponge that magically heals after every encounter. Well, I found a very simple solution. Changing away from health to another system doesn't need to change the core gameplay. A shift like this can be handled entirely by changing the feedback given to the player on the front end. When you break it down, there are 2 main indicators that game designers use to communicate to players that they are receiving damage: visual and audible. Today's sponsor, and I'd like to take a visual and audible. The audible side is generally handled by a satisfying or sound to inform you that a hit connected. This is true both for when you give damage and receive it, whereas the visual tends to take on 2 different forms. The GUI, or this thing, in the form of hearts and health bars, and in the gameplay, with the player visibly responding to damage, or with vital fluids and overlay filters. These 2 components, the visual and audible, are all that need to be changed in order to achieve the appearance of the player dying after one hit. Now, I don't think action and RPG games necessarily need this sort of change, because realism isn't usually the main draw. Plus, it can feel good to level your character up a bunch, and then go into a fight completely unfazed by enemy attacks. Still, providing an alternative is incredibly easy here. Instead of your character having health points that they lose when damaged, you simply avoid being hit by attacks. It would be a straight replacement to health points. Let's say you start off with 30 health and can survive 3 hits from a basic enemy, but a higher level enemy can defeat you with 1 hit. Well, replace the concept of health with combat ability or skill, and then you can avoid 3 hits from a basic enemy, but a higher level enemy can hit you right away without missing you. It makes perfect sense, and suddenly, leveling up actually means you have more skill and are a better fighter. So instead of being hit sounding like this, it would sound like this. It's a subtle change, but if some games implemented a system like this, it would bring some variety and help shake things up in the genre. But the real opportunity for this kind of change is with shooter games. The core gameplay doesn't even need to change, only rather than getting hit sounding like this, you would just have ricochet sounds indicating that bullets are flying all around you, and for the visual, you would have something like pulsing or blurring on any near miss until the final shot that ends your player. This almost gives a more adrenaline-filled experience because the bullets whizzing by tell you immediately to find cover or fire back, and if you do survive, it feels all the more rewarding to emerge feeling like you dodged every shot. To the player who is shooting, things could be exactly the same, still providing the satisfying sound, letting you know that your aim is on, but the final hit being the one that actually connects. Honestly, the idea works in every genre, and it allows you to add a level of realism to games without needing to change any of the core gameplay mechanics. So after going through all these thoughts in my head, my overambitious self thought, I could make a game to get this point across to you as an example of what this would look like. But it turned out to be a very poor example. So for the next 3 minutes, you get to watch me struggle to pull this off. 2 videos for the price of 1. Now I've never developed a game in Unity before. I don't even know C#. But Blender killed off its game engine, and if I want to appeal to the normies, I gotta learn Unity at some point. So what I'm gonna do here is a pro gamer move called Figure It Out As I Go. If you know how to develop in Unity, this is the point where I recommend you to close this video and delete your browser history, or prepare to be horrified. Here we go. So the first thing you gotta do is name your project something memorable, and I started with building an engaging level. Rectangle. Also, let's add a little detail to the floor, because that's the most important part of the game. Then I'm gonna need a character, but I don't know how to animate in Unity. So I find some free character assets. Then I try to find a simple movement script. This one worked on this 2D square for me, so how about I try it on my character? Nope. Let me try this one then.
Nothing.
How about I find someone on YouTube who did this before?
Hey, would you like to learn to code by making computer games?
No.
I engulfed myself completely in Unity's movement system. I began absorbing information at a faster pace. My heart rate soared into the quadruple digits. My mind expanded into multiple dimensions. My palms were sweaty, knees weak, arms spaghetti.
3:28 a.m.
When I emerged from my trance-like state, I held the answer to all our questions. Look at this, just like real life. The number one goal here is photorealism. This game plays just like any other game, but where regular games are unrealistic and unbelievable in every way, mine is believable and plays exactly like everyday life, as you can see. So what did we learn?
Nothing.
The main takeaway here is that the games we play don't really need health. There are perfectly functional alternatives that provide the same experience. Now, removing health isn't really necessary, but it's totally achievable, and I think it would be interesting to see some games adopt this style. I doubt they will. If you know of any games that are out there like this, let me know in the comments. I'd be interested to try something like this out. Thanks for making it this far in the video. If you enjoyed this one, share it with someone you know. Make sure to leave a like, and if you're new here, subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching.